In the hours when the world grows quiet and the stars begin their ancient watch, there are stories that rise from the dust of forgotten places. Not the loud stories of conquest and kings, but the softer ones, the whispers that drift through crumbling temples, the echoes that linger in chambers no living eye has seen, the questions that have no answers and ask only to be held. Tonight, we journey into such places. We will walk through libraries that may still breathe beneath the sand. We will stand before gates that opened only once and never again. We will listen for bells that ring beneath the sea and trace the paths of starlight across landscapes that remember what we have forgotten. This is not a history lesson. There will be no dates to memorize, no names to recall when morning comes. This is something older, a pilgrimage through the sacred and the lost, a meditation on mystery itself. We seek not to solve, but to wonder, not to know, but to feel the weight of all that remains unknown. Let your breath slow now. Let the concerns of the waking world drift away like clouds passing before the moon. The night is deep, and the stories are patient. They have waited centuries for someone to listen. They can wait a few moments more while you settle into stillness. When you are ready, when the silence feels soft against your skin, and your eyes have grown heavy with the coming of dreams, we will begin. We will descend into the lost city of eternal silence. And there, in the hush between heartbeats, we will remember what it means to wonder. Not in books alone, though there were books beyond counting, but in the very air between the shelves, in the silence that pooled like water in the corners of vast halls, in the breath of those who came to read and stayed to dream. It is said that when you entered this place, you could feel the weight of everything humanity had ever thought pressing gently against your skin, like the warmth of a sun that had set long ago, but whose light still traveled toward you across the dark. This was the library of Alexandria, or rather, this is the memory of it, a memory wrapped in myth, veiled in centuries of forgetting, buried beneath the sand and salt of a world that has moved on, but never quite let go. Close your eyes now, and let us descend together into that ancient place, not as scholars seeking facts, but as dreamers following a single flame through corridors that may no longer exist, or that may exist still, somewhere beneath the silence, waiting. We begin not with the library itself, but with a single scroll. Imagine it unrolled by candlelight in a chamber of pale stone. The papyrus is the color of honey, aged to a golden translucence, and its edges tremble faintly in the breath of the flame, like the wings of a moth drawn to something it cannot name. Upon its surface, Words have been inscribed in ink made from lamp soot and gum, each letter placed with the care of a prayer. What wisdom does it hold? We do not know. Perhaps a poem, perhaps a formula for medicine, perhaps a name, just a name that someone wished never to be forgotten. This is where we enter. Through the small gate, the quiet threshold, not through grand columns or marble steps, but through this fragile thing, a single record of a single thought, preserved across millennia by hands we will never see. And from here, the question rises like smoke. What happens to knowledge when it is forgotten? Does it vanish into nothing, as though it never was? Or does it simply wait patient, silent, curled like a seed in darkness, for someone to remember how to listen? The Library of Alexandria was founded in the 3rd century before the Common Era, in a city built by a conqueror, but shaped by dreamers. It is said that Ptolemy I, successor to Alexander, wished to gather all the knowledge of the world beneath one roof. Every ship that entered the harbor was searched for scrolls, and any texts found were copied, or sometimes kept for the library's collection. Scholars came from every corner of the ancient world, from Greece and Persia, from India and the lands beyond. They came to read. They came to argue. They came to sit in silence with thoughts older than their grandmothers' grandmothers, and to feel, perhaps, that they were part of something vaster than themselves. Whispers tell us there were 700,000 scrolls at its height, perhaps more. The number matters less than the weight of it, the impossible, sacred weight of so much knowing gathered in one place, breathing together like a living thing. And the library did breathe. This is what the poets said, what the visitors wrote in letters home, what the scholars murmured to one another in the amber light of oil lamps. The air itself was thick with memory. The dust that drifted through the shafts of sunlight was not merely dust, it was the residue of words, the particles of thought released each time a scroll was opened, each time a page was turned. To walk through those halls was to inhale the dreams of 1,000 generations. The floors were cool stone, and it is said that the scholars walked barefoot so as not to disturb the silence. There were no loud voices here, no arguments that rose above a whisper, only the soft turning of papyrus, the scratch of reed pens, the occasional sigh of someone encountering a truth so beautiful it could not be contained. Cedar oil perfumed the air, used to preserve the scrolls from insects and decay, and beneath it, the faint salt breeze from the harbor, where the lighthouse stood watch over the waters, and the library stood watch over the mind. so history tells us it was lost. But here, in the hush of this midnight hour, we will not speak of fire. We will not speak of soldiers or accidents, or the slow crumbling of empires that no longer remembered what they had been given to protect. These stories exist, and they may be true, but they are not the only stories. Some say the library never truly burned. Some say it sank, like a temple into water, like a secret returning to the deep, from which all secrets come. Beneath the harbor of Alexandria, they whisper, beneath the silt and the centuries, the scrolls remain preserved in salt, in silence, in the eternal moonlight that filters through the waves. The fish swim through reading rooms where philosophers once debated the nature of the soul. The currents turn pages that have not been read in 2,000 years. We do not confirm this. We do not deny it. We only hold the image gently, as one holds a candle against the dark, not to illuminate everything, but to remind ourselves that there is more to see than what the light reveals. Perhaps what was lost was never truly gone. This is the deeper mystery, the one that hums beneath the story like a note too low to hear, but felt in the bones. Knowledge, the ancients believed, was not merely written, it was alive. It moved through the world like breath, like wind, like the unseen threads that connect the stars. To write something down was to give it a body, a temporary form. But the knowing itself existed before and after, independent of the page. If this is true, then the burning of a library is not the death of wisdom, only the release of it. The words return to the air. The thoughts return to the silence from which they came. And they wait there, patient as stone, until someone learns again how to listen. Beneath the silence of this world, how much forgotten truth still hums. How many cures, how many poems, how many names of gods we no longer remember, all of it suspended in the space between breaths, in the pause between heartbeats, in the darkness just before sleep. Let us rest now in that darkness. Imagine a chamber deep beneath the earth, or deep beneath the sea, where a single candle still burns. No one has entered this room for 1,000 years. The air is still. The scrolls are neatly arranged on shelves of ancient wood, their surfaces untouched by time, as though waiting for a reader who has not yet been born. The candle does not flicker. It does not waver. It burns with a light that seems to come from within, as though the flame itself is a kind of memory, a small, persistent knowing that refuses to be forgotten. This is the library that breathed beneath the sand, not the building, which may be rubble, not the scrolls, which may be ash, but the idea of it, the sacred hope that somewhere, somehow, everything we have ever learned is still preserved, still patient, still holding the light. And perhaps it is. Perhaps, in the deepest chambers of the world, in the quietest corners of the night, in the spaces between our thoughts, where silence lives and breathes, the library remains. Not lost, only waiting, waiting for us to remember, waiting for us to listen, waiting for us to close our eyes and find our way back to those amber halls where the dust of ancient words still drifts through shafts of golden light, and the air itself is thick with the weight of all we have forgotten, and all we might one day remember again. Sleep now. The scrolls will keep. The candle will burn. And somewhere beneath the sand, beneath the sea, beneath the silence, the library breathes on. And so the first chapter closes, like a scroll being gently rolled, like a hand withdrawing from a page too sacred to touch for long. The light dims, the whispers fade, and we drift deeper into the night, where other mysteries await patient, ancient, veiled in shadow, ready to unfold when we are ready to receive them. In the desert of Egypt, where the sand remembers everything and forgets nothing, two colossal figures sit in eternal stillness. They have sat there for more than 3,000 years, watching the sun rise over the Nile, watching empires bloom and crumble, watching the slow procession of humanity pass before them like shadows on water. These are the colossi of Memnon twin statues carved from single blocks of quartzite sandstone, each standing 70 feet tall, each bearing the face of a pharaoh, whose name the Greeks could not pronounce, and so gave him another. Memnon, the Ethiopian king who fell at Troy, the son of the dawn goddess Eos. But this chapter is not about names or dates or the quarries from which the stone was cut. This chapter is about a sound of voice that rose from cracked stone at the first light of morning, a song that no one could explain, a mystery that drew pilgrims from across the ancient world, and then, one day, fell silent forever. Close your eyes. Let the desert wind brush against your skin, and listen. It is said that the statue began to sing after an earthquake. In the year 27 before the Common Era, the earth trembled, and the northern Colossus cracked a deep fissure running through its torso, splitting the stone but not toppling it. And from that wound at dawn, a sound emerged. Travelers described it differently. Some said it was a whistle, high and thin, like wind through a broken flute. Others said it was a hum, low and resonant, like the voice of the earth itself waking from sleep. Still others said it was a cry mournful, beautiful, human, as though the stone were grieving for something it had lost. The Greeks believed it was the voice of Memnon, calling to his mother Eos as she painted the sky with rose and gold. Each morning, they said, he cried out to her, and she wept for him, her tears falling as dew upon the desert. It was a story of love that transcended death, of a son reaching across the veil to touch his mother one more time. The Romans, ever practical, sought other explanations. Perhaps it was the heat of the rising sun expanding the stone after the cold of night. Perhaps it was moisture evaporating from the cracks, creating vibrations as it escaped. Perhaps it was nothing more than physics beautiful, yes, but explicable. And yet they came. Emperors and scholars, poets and priests. They carved their names into the base of the statue, leaving records of their visits, their wonder, their desperate hope that they too might hear the voice of the singing stone. Imagine standing there in the hour before dawn. The sky is still dark, scattered with stars that seem closer here than anywhere else on earth. The air is cold, desert cold, the kind that seeps into your bones and makes you grateful for the woolen cloak wrapped around your shoulders. Before you, the colossi rise like mountains, their features lost in shadow, their presence felt more than seen. You are not alone. Other pilgrims stand nearby, silent, waiting. Some have traveled for months to reach this place. Some have come because they are dying and wish to hear something sacred before they go. Some have come because they no longer believe in anything, and they hope secretly, desperately, that the stone will prove them wrong. The horizon begins to lighten. A thin line of gold appears where the desert meets the sky. The stars fade, one by one, like candles being extinguished by an unseen hand. And then there, a sound, faint at first, almost imagined. A vibration in the air, a trembling in the stone. A note so pure it seems to bypass your ears entirely and enter through your heart. The statue is singing. What did it mean, this song from cracked stone? The ancients wrestled with the question. Some said it was a blessing, that to hear the voice of Memnon was to be touched by the divine, to carry that sound within you for the rest of your days, like a secret too sacred to speak. Others said it was a warning, the cry of a fallen hero, reminding the living that even the greatest among us will one day be brought low. But perhaps the meaning was simpler. Perhaps it was this, that the world is full of voices we have not yet learned to hear. That stone can sing, that the earth can speak, that the boundary between the living and the dead is thinner then we imagine thin as the membrane of a drum, trembling with every breath of wind. The pilgrims who heard the sound often wept, not from sadness, but from something deeper, a recognition, perhaps, that they were part of something vast and mysterious, something that had been going on long before they were born and would continue long after they were gone. The song connected them to the dawn, to the stone, to all the others who had stood in this same spot and heard this same sound across the centuries. For a moment, they were not alone. For a moment, they were held. And then, in the 3rd century of the Common Era, an emperor came to Egypt. His name was Septimius Severus, and he wished to honor the statue that had drawn so many to this sacred place. He ordered his engineers to repair the cracks, to restore the Colossus to its former glory. They did their work well. The fissures were filled, the stone was made whole, and the statue never sang again. There is something unbearably sad in this, and something unbearably true. The emperor meant well. He wished to heal what was broken, to make beautiful what had been damaged. But in doing so, he silenced the very voice that had made the place sacred. The wound had been the source of the song. The brokenness had been the gift. Perhaps this is why we are drawn to ruins. Not because they are beautiful though they are, but because they speak. Because the cracks let something through that wholeness cannot contain. Because the places where things have broken are the places where light enters, where sound escapes, where the boundary between worlds grows thin enough to cross. The Colossus stands silent now, and has for 1,800 years. The tourists come with their cameras and their guidebooks, and they see only stone impressive, ancient, mute. They do not hear what the pilgrims heard. They do not weep at dawn. But some say whispers, only whispers that if you go alone, if you go in the hour before the sun rises, if you press your ear against the cool stone and hold your breath and listen with something deeper than your ears, you can still hear it, faint, far away, a vibration more felt than heard, like the memory of a song, like the echo of a voice that refuses to be silenced even after all these years. Let us rest now in that silence. The sun has risen. The desert glows with gold and rose, the colors of Eos weeping for her son. The statue stands as it has always stood, patient, eternal, keeping its secrets close. Perhaps the song is gone. Perhaps it waits. Perhaps it was never in the stone at all, but in the hearts of those who came to listen a sound they carried within them, a song they finally learned to hear in the presence of something ancient and broken and beautiful. We will not know. The mystery remains, as all true mysteries must. But tonight, as you drift toward sleep, carry this image with you. A statue at dawn, cracked and singing, calling to a goddess who answers with tears of dew and light. And know that somewhere in the world, even now, there are stones that remember how to speak, if only we remember how to listen. The desert wind sighs. The stars return. And in the silence between heartbeats, something ancient stirs and waits and breathes. High in the mountains of Peru, where the air is thin and the sky presses close against the earth, there is a doorway carved into living rock. It leads nowhere, or so it appears. A flat stone surface, smooth as water, shaped unmistakably into the form of a portal. A rectangular frame, perhaps 23 feet tall, with a smaller alcove at its center, just large enough for a single person to stand within. This is the Puerta de Heyumarca, the gate of the gods. No one knows who carved it. No one knows when. The local people, the Aymara, say it has been there since the beginning of time, that it was old when their ancestors first climbed these mountains, that it was old when the first llamas were tamed, that it was old when the stars themselves were young. And they say something else. They say that once, long ago, the gate opened, and someone walked through, and the gate closed behind them, and has never opened since. Let us approach slowly, as pilgrims approach a sacred place. The journey is not easy. The gate lies near the shores of Lake Titicaca, at an altitude where each breath requires effort, where the sunlight falls with unusual intensity, where the silence is so complete that you can hear your own blood moving through your veins. The landscape is stark and beautiful red rock, brown earth, the distant gleam of water that the ancients called the birthplace of the sun. As you climb toward the gate, you feel the weight of the place settling over you. This is not a tourist attraction. This is not a curiosity to be photographed and forgotten. This is something older, something that does not care whether you believe in it, something that simply is. And then you see it, rising from the rock face like a dream made solid, a doorway to nowhere, a threshold without a room beyond. The stone is smooth, unnaturally so. The edges are precise. Whoever carved this knew exactly what they were doing, and knew, perhaps, things that we have forgotten how to know. The legends speak of Aramu Muru. He was a priest, they say, a keeper of sacred objects, a guardian of mysteries that predated even the great civilizations of the Andes. When invaders came, whether from across the sea or from rival kingdoms, the stories do not agree. Aramu Muru fled into the mountains, carrying with him a golden disc that held the power of the gods themselves. He came to this place. He came to this gate, he performed a ritual that the legends only hint at something involving the golden disc, something involving words spoken in a language no living tongue remembers, something involving a willingness to leave this world behind and enter another. The gate opened, not outward, not inward, but through as though the solid stone had become water or mist or light. Aramu Muru stepped forward. The gate shimmered, and then it was stone again, and he was gone. Some say he passed into the realm of the gods. Some say he entered a hidden kingdom beneath the mountains, where the old wisdom is still preserved, where the priests still chant, where the golden disc still turns. Some say he simply ceased to exist in any way we can understand, translated into something beyond form, beyond time, beyond the limitations of flesh and breath. We do not know. The gate keeps its secrets. The stone remains silent. But the stories do not end there. In more recent times, visitors to the gate have reported strange experiences. A feeling of energy pulsing from the stone. A sense of being watched by eyes that have no form. Dreams, after visiting, of tunnels leading deep into the earth, of chambers filled with golden light, of voices speaking in languages that feel familiar but cannot be understood. Some have placed their hands in the small alcove at the center of the gate and felt warmth where there should be cold stone. Some have pressed their foreheads against the rock and seen visions brief, fragmentary, gone before they can be grasped. Some have simply stood before the gate and wept, without knowing why, as though something within them recognized this place from a time before memory. The Aymara do not encourage such visits. They say the gate is sacred, that it should be approached with reverence, that those who come seeking power or proof will find nothing, while those who come with open hearts may find more than they bargained for. Perhaps they are right. Perhaps the gate responds to intention, to the quality of attention we bring to it. Perhaps it remains closed to those who demand that it open, and opens in its own way, in its own time to those who simply stand before it and wait. What would it mean to step through such a gate? The question is not merely physical. It is spiritual, existential, a question about the nature of boundaries themselves. We live our lives within borders, the border between self and other, between past and future, between the known and the unknown. We build walls to feel safe. We draw lines to feel certain. And yet, somewhere within us, there is a longing to cross over, to see what lies beyond, to discover that the walls were never as solid as they seemed. The gate of the gods stands as a reminder that such crossings may be possible. Not easy, not guaranteed, guaranteed, but possible. Somewhere, sometime, someone stepped through stone and entered another realm. The gate closed behind them, but the gate exists. The possibility remains. Perhaps this is why the gate was carved in the first place, not as a functional doorway, but as a symbol, a reminder that the boundary between worlds is thinner than we think, that the solid rock of reality has hidden doors for those who know how to find them. Or perhaps the legends are literally true. Perhaps the gate did open once and will open again when the time is right, when the ritual is performed, when someone comes bearing the golden disc and the words that unlock stone. We cannot say. The mystery is the point. The uncertainty is the gift. Let us rest now before the gate. The sun is setting over Lake Titicaca, painting the water with colors that have no names in any language we speak. The air grows cold. The stars begin to emerge, first one, then dozens, then thousands, the same stars that shone when Aramu Muru stood in this very spot, preparing to leave everything he knew behind. The gate stands silent, patient, carved into the mountain like a question that expects no answer. Its surface gleams faintly in the fading light. The alcove at its center is dark, empty, waiting. If you could step through, would you? If the stone shimmered and softened and opened before you, revealing a tunnel of golden light leading to realms unknown, would you walk forward? Would you leave this world with all its sorrows and all its sweetness for something utterly other? We do not need to answer. The question itself is enough. The question opens something within us, a gate of its own, a doorway into wonder. Close your eyes now. Feel the thin air, the cold stone, the vast silence of the mountains, and know that somewhere, in some version of this moment, the gate is open. Somewhere, someone is stepping through. Somewhere, the journey continues beyond sight, beyond knowing, beyond the edge of dreams. The gate waits. The stars wheel overhead, and we drift deeper into the night, carrying the mystery with us like a key we have not yet learned to use. There is a place where stone and sky became one, where architects of an age we call ancient built not merely buildings, but instruments of starlight, monuments that breathed with the rhythm of the cosmos. This place rises from the jungles of Cambodia like a vision, half remembered from a dream. Angkor Wat, the temple that remembered the stars. Close your eyes and let the humid air embrace you. Let the scent of lotus blossoms and ancient stone fill your lungs. Let the chorus of cicadas and distant bird calls become a kind of music, a meditation. a song the jungle has been singing since before humans learned to listen. We are entering sacred ground, not as tourists, but as pilgrims, not to see, but to feel, not to understand, but to wonder. The temple was built in the 12th century, though to say this is to say almost nothing at all. Numbers and dates are the language of the waking mind, and we are drifting now towards something deeper. What matters is this. The builders of Angkor Wat looked at the sky and saw order. They saw patterns in the wheeling of stars, rhythms in the rising of planets, a vast celestial clock that marked not merely hours and seasons, but ages, eons, the breath of eternity itself. And they decided to capture that order in stone. The temple is oriented with extraordinary precision. Its western entrance aligns with the setting sun on the spring equinox. Its towers mirror the constellation that Western astronomers call Draco the Dragon, that coils around the northern pole of the sky. Its corridors and chambers are positioned so that, at specific moments on specific days, shafts of light penetrate the darkness and illuminate the faces of gods. This is not accident. This is not coincidence. This is intention profound, patient, spanning generations of builders who would never live to see their work completed. Imagine the temple at dawn. The jungle is waking. Mist rises from the moat that surrounds the complex like a protective embrace, turning the air silver and gold. The 5 towers of the central sanctuary emerge from the haze, like mountains from clouds, like the peaks of Mount Meru, the sacred mountain at the center of the universe, which the temple was designed to represent. You approach along the western causeway, a bridge of stone stretching across the water. The air is thick with humidity, with the perfume of flowers you cannot name, with the sense of something vast and ancient watching your approach. Each step brings you closer to the outer wall, then through the entrance gate, then into the first enclosure, where galleries stretch in every direction, their walls covered with carvings so intricate they seem to move in the shifting light. The carvings tell stories. Here, the churning of the cosmic ocean gods and demons pulling a serpent wrapped around a mountain, generating the elixir of immortality. There, the army of a king marching to war, each soldier distinct, each elephant detailed, each spear and shield rendered with impossible precision. And here, the heavens and hells the rewards of the righteous, the punishments of the wicked, the endless cycle of death and rebirth that the temple both depicts and transcends. But the true wonder is not in the carvings. It is in the spaces between them. It is in the way the corridors lead you deeper and higher, ever closer to the central sanctuary, ever closer to the axis around which the universe turns. The Khmer people who built Angkor Wat believed that the temple was more than a building. It was a model of reality itself, a three-dimensional diagram of everything that exists, from the lowest hell to the highest heaven, from the beginning of time to its end. To enter the temple was to enter the cosmos. To climb its stairs was to ascend through layers of existence. To reach the central tower was to touch the point where the mortal and divine meet, where the human soul can glimpse its own infinite nature. And the stars were part of this vision. The builders aligned their creation with the heavens because they understood that the sky was not separate from the earth, that the movements of planets and constellations were not distant and irrelevant, but intimate and essential. As above, so below. The temple was built to catch the light of specific stars at specific moments, to create a dialogue between stone and sky, between the works of human hands and the patterns woven by forces beyond human comprehension. Some scholars believe the temple encodes astronomical knowledge that modern science is only beginning to recover. The dimensions of the complex, when measured in ancient units, yield numbers that correspond to cosmic cycles, the precession of the equinoxes, the periods of planetary orbits, the durations of ages. Whether this is coincidence or intention, we cannot say. But the possibility haunts us, suggesting that the builders knew things we have forgotten, saw connections we have lost the ability to see. There is a moment, twice each year, when the sun rises directly over the central tower of Angkor Wat. On those mornings, the spring and autumn equinoxes pilgrims gather before dawn, just as pilgrims gathered 900 years ago. They wait in darkness, watching the eastern sky lighten, watching the stars fade, watching the first rays of gold emerge from the horizon. And then it happens. The sun crests the tower, perfectly centered, as though the architects reached across the centuries to place it there. Light floods the causeway. The stone glows as if lit from within. For a moment, time collapses, the past and present merge. The ancient builders stand beside the modern watchers, and everyone shares the same sunrise, the same wonder, the same breath. This is what the temple remembers. This is what the stones have held for nearly a millennium. Not facts or figures, but a feeling, the feeling of being connected to something vast, of being part of a pattern too large to see, but too real to deny. Let us rest now in the inner sanctuary. The air is cooler here, shadowed by stone. The walls rise around you like the petals of a lotus, closing out the world. Somewhere above, through a shaft too narrow to climb, a single star is visible even now, even in daylight, a point of light that the builders captured for reasons we can only guess. The temple does not ask you to understand. It asks only that you feel, that you let the weight of ages settle over you like a blessing, that you remember, even for a moment, that you are part of something larger than yourself, that your breath is the breath of stars, that your heartbeat echoes the rhythm of the cosmos, that the same forces that shaped the heavens shaped you. Close your eyes. Feel the stone beneath your feet, cool and solid, placed there by hands that crumbled to dust centuries ago. Feel the air, thick with the memory of incense and prayer. Feel the silence, not empty, but full of all the pilgrims who came before, all the prayers that were offered, all the wonder that was felt. The temple remembers the stars, and tonight, as you drift toward sleep, the stars remember you. There is a city that appears on no modern map, a city spoken of in fragments, glimpsed in the margins of ancient manuscripts, whispered about in the tents of Bedouins who cross the endless sands. Its name, when spoken, sounds like wind through abandoned palaces. Iram, Iram of the Pillars, the city that God himself, it is said, erased from the face of the earth. Tonight, we wander toward that lost place, not to find it, for it cannot be found, but to feel the shape of its absence, the weight of its memory, the longing that its story leaves behind. Close your eyes. Let the desert wind rise around you. Let the sand whisper its secrets, and let us follow a path that may lead nowhere, or everywhere, or to the very edge of dreams. The story begins, as many stories do, with pride. The king who built Iram wished to create a paradise on earth. He wished to rival the gardens of heaven itself, to prove that human hands could shape beauty as great as any the gods had made. For 300 years, the legends say, he labored. He gathered architects and artisans from across the known world. He ordered columns carved from gold and silver, walls inlaid with precious stones, gardens watered by channels that defied the laws of the desert. And when it was finished, when the last tower rose, and the last fountain sang, and the last flower bloomed in soil that should have been barren, the king stood at the center of his creation and declared that he had succeeded. He had built a city to rival paradise. Some say this was his sin, not the building itself, but but the pride, the belief that human achievement could equal divine creation. Others say the sin was simpler. He had taken too much from the earth, drained too many springs, cut too many trees, ignored the balance that keeps the world alive. Whatever the cause, the punishment was swift and absolute. A great wind rose from the desert, a wind like nothing that had blown before, a wind that carried not sand but shadow, not heat but silence. It swept over Aram in a single night, and when the sun rose, the city was gone, buried, erased, as though it had never existed at all. But stories do not die so easily. The Quran speaks of Aram in a single verse, brief and haunting. Aram of the lofty pillars, the like of which was never created in any land. That is all. No location, no date, no explanation. Just the acknowledgement that such a place once was, and that it was beyond compare. The Bedouins carried other stories. They spoke of travelers who glimpsed the city at twilight, its towers rising from the dunes like a mirage, but a mirage that cast shadows, a mirage where birds circled and banners flew. They spoke of caravans that passed too close and were never seen again, swallowed by sands that shifted and rearranged themselves in the night. They spoke of treasures half buried at the edges of known oases, objects too beautiful to be of human make, too ancient to be explained. For centuries, explorers searched. They followed clues in old poems, in the writings of Greek historians, in the dreams of mystics who claimed to have visited Aram in visions. Some said it lay in Yemen, in the region called the Empty Quarter, where even the most hardened desert travelers feared to go. Others said it was in Oman, or Jordan, or somewhere beyond geography, altogether a city that existed outside of space, visible only to those who had learned to see with something other than their eyes. No one found it, or rather, no one found it and returned to tell. What would it mean to find such a city? This is the question that haunts the searchers, the dreamers, those who lie awake at night and imagine golden towers emerging from the sand. To find Aram would be to prove that the legends were true, that paradise can be built, and that it can be taken away. It would be to touch something that God Himself deemed too beautiful for the world to keep. But perhaps the not finding is the point. Perhaps Aram exists precisely because it cannot be found a reminder that some things are beyond our grasp, that some beauties are meant to be longed for rather than possessed. The desert keeps its secrets not out of cruelty, but out of love. The city remains hidden not because it was destroyed, but because it waits patient, eternal, shimmering just beyond the edge of vision. Some nights, they say, when the moon is full and the wind falls still, you can see it. A gleam on the horizon that is not a star. A shape that might be towers, might be palms, might be nothing at all. If you walk toward it, it recedes. If you stand still, it draws closer. And if you close your eyes and listen, you can hear faintly, distantly, like music from a room at the end of a long corridor, the sound of fountains and laughter and the singing of birds that have no names. Let us rest now at the edge of the empty quarter. The sun has set. The sand, which burned gold and orange just moments ago, has turned silver in the moonlight. The sky is vast and black and scattered with stars, so bright they seem close enough to touch. The silence is absolute, the kind of silence that fills you rather than empties you, that makes you aware of your own heartbeat, your own breath, the small miracle of your own existence. Somewhere out there, beneath the dunes or beyond the horizon, or in a fold of space that our maps cannot measure, Iram waits. The city that faded with the moonlight, the paradise that was taken, the dream that refuses to die. You do not need to find it. You do not need to prove it exists. You only need to feel the shape of its absence, the ache, the longing, the strange comfort of knowing that somewhere, somehow, beauty beyond imagination was once made real. Close your eyes. Let the desert hold you. Let the moonlight fall like a blessing on your face, and know that the city is there, shimmering just beyond the edge of sleep, waiting for dreamers who are brave enough to follow. The sand sighs, the stars wheel on, and somewhere in the silver dark, a fountain sings and flowers bloom, and the pillars of Iram rise toward a sky that has never forgotten them. In the year 1513, in the city of Constantinople, an admiral named Piri Rise spread a sheet of gazelle skin across his table and began to draw a map. He was not an ordinary map maker. He was a navigator, a scholar, a man who had sailed the seas of the Ottoman Empire and studied the charts of civilizations far older than his own. He had access to sources that have since been lost: ancient Greek maps, Arab sea charts, documents that Columbus himself had drawn, and others whose origins he described only in riddles. When the map was finished, it showed something that should have been impossible. It depicted coastlines that would not be explored for centuries. It rendered mountains that would not be charted for decades. And in its lower corner, it showed a continent Antarctica, not as the ice-covered mystery we know today, but as it appeared beneath the glaciers, a landmass free of ice, with rivers and inlets and features that modern satellite imaging has only recently confirmed. How did he know? What did he see? What older maps did he copy? And who made them? And when? And how? Close your eyes. Let us unfold that ancient parchment together and trace its impossible lines into the shadow. The map came to light in 1929, discovered in the Topkapi Palace during a renovation. For years, it was dismissed as a curiosity, a skillful but unremarkable piece of 16th century cartography. But then scholars looked closer. They measured, they compared, and they began to ask questions that had no comfortable answers. The coastline of South America was rendered with surprising accuracy more accurate, in some ways, than maps made 200 years later. The Caribbean islands were positioned correctly relative to one another and to the mainland. And Antarctica, which would not be officially discovered until 1818, more than 300 years after Peary Rise drew his map, appeared in recognizable form, complete with details that could only be seen if one could peer beneath miles of ice. Peary Rise himself offered clues. In notes written on the map's margins, he explained that he had compiled his work from approximately 20 source charts, including maps dating back to the time of Alexander the Great. Some of these sources, he wrote, were ancient, older than memory, older than history, preserved through centuries of copying and recopying by scholars who may not have fully understood what they held. What were these sources? Who made them? And how did ancient cartographers, whoever they were, know the shape of a continent that would remain hidden under ice for millennia? The questions lead us into shadow. Some believe the source maps were the work of a lost civilization, a seafaring culture that flourished before the last ice age, before the great floods that ancient stories remember, before the world as we know it took shape. They navigated coasts that have since been submerged or frozen. They charted lands that have since been forgotten, and their knowledge, somehow, survived passed down through chains of transmission we can barely imagine, surfacing in fragments in the libraries of Constantinople, the archives of Alexandria, the secret collections of scholars who recognized their value even if they could not explain their origin. Others offer more cautious explanations. Perhaps Peary Rise extrapolated. Perhaps his sources contained errors that, by chance, resembled features we now know to be real. Perhaps the correlation between his map and modern geography is coincidence meaningful to us, but meaningless in truth. We do not know. The source maps are gone, if they ever existed. The chain of transmission is broken. We are left only with the map itself, rolled and stored in a palace, holding its secrets close for 400 years. But let us not argue. Let us simply look. Imagine the parchment spread before you in candlelight. The ink has faded to brown, but the lines are still clear coastlines curving like the edges of a dream. Compass roses pointing to directions that may no longer exist. Sea monsters and ships decorating the empty spaces where the mapmaker's knowledge ended and imagination began. Run your finger along the coast of South America. Feel the shape of Brazil, the curve of the coastline, the rivers emptying into the sea. Now move south, past the tip of the continent, into waters that Peary Rise marked as unknown, but drew anyway, guided by sources he never named. And there is Antarctica, or something like it, a coast that shouldn't be there, drawn by a hand that shouldn't have known. Look closely. See the bays and the headlands. See the mountains that rise from the shore. See the rivers that have not flowed for 12,000 years, buried now under miles of ice, but marked on this map as clearly as if the cartographer had sailed their waters himself. What does it mean to hold knowledge we cannot explain? This is the deeper question, the one the map whispers if we are quiet enough to hear. Our world is full of things we do not understand, artifacts that predate the civilizations we thought were first, structures that require technologies we thought were later, knowledge that appears in places and times where, according to our histories, it should not exist. We can dismiss these anomalies. We can explain them away. We can fold them into comfortable narratives that leave our understanding undisturbed. Or we can sit with them in the candlelight. We can let the mystery remain unresolved. We can admit that the past is deeper than we know, that the story of humanity may have chapters we have not yet learned to read, that the map is not the territory, and our histories are not the whole truth. The Peary Rise map does not prove anything. It only suggests. It only wonders. It only asks, what if? Let us rest now with that question. The candle gutters. The parchment is rolled and sealed, placed back in its drawer, returned to the silence from which it came. For another 400 years, perhaps, it will wait holding its lines, keeping its secrets, patient as stone. But the question remains, floating in the darkness like a single point of light. Who made the source maps? How did they know? What else did they know that we have forgotten, that we have not yet remembered, that waits to be discovered in archives and palaces and the margins of ancient texts? Close your eyes. Let the map fade, but carry the question with you as you drift toward sleep, a small, bright thing. A compass rose pointing toward mysteries not yet solved, toward lands not yet charted, toward shadows that may yet yield their secrets to those who are patient and humble and willing to wonder. The ink dries, the parchment curls, and somewhere in the dark, the ancient cartographers watch and wait, their hands still steady, their eyes still seeing shores that time has hidden from the rest of us. Off the coast of Wales, where the land crumbles into the Irish Sea, and the water holds more secrets than the sky, fishermen speak in hushed voices of a sound they sometimes hear at twilight. A tolling, low and slow, rising from beneath the waves. A bell, they say. The bell of a church that has not stood above water for 1,000 years. This is the legend of Cantrair, Gwaelod the Sunken Hundred, a kingdom that once flourished in a land that is now only sea, a kingdom lost in a single night when a watchman forgot his duty, when the waves came rushing through gates left open, when an entire civilization slipped beneath the tide and into the realm of memory. Close your eyes. Let the salt air fill your lungs, and let us sink together into this story, down through the cold green water, down to where the bells still ring and the towers still stand, and the kingdom waits for someone to remember. The story is older, perhaps, than the language in which it is told. The Welsh bards sang of it around fires that burned 1,000 years ago. They sang of a fertile plain, protected from the sea by a great embankment, a wall of earth and stone that held back the waters and allowed the people to farm and build and prosper. The plain was called Cantrair Gwaelod, and it was ruled by a king named Gwydno Garanhir. His lands were rich, his people were many, and his kingdom stretched for miles 16 cities, the legends say, with towers and temples and streets filled with the sounds of commerce and prayer. But the sea was patient. The sea was always watching, and the sea had only to wait for one moment of carelessness, one lapse in vigilance, one human failure, and the kingdom would be hers. That failure came in the form of a man named Sethanin. He was the keeper of the gates, the one responsible for ensuring that the sluices in the great embankment were closed at high tide. It was a sacred duty, a responsibility that meant life or death for everyone who lived behind the wall. But Sethanin was proud, or perhaps he was drunk, or perhaps he was simply human, which is to say, capable of forgetting. One night, when the moon was dark and the tide was higher than it had been in living memory, Sethanin failed to close the gates. The sea came rushing through, unstoppable, indifferent, claiming what had always been hers. By morning, The plain was gone. The cities were gone. The people who could not flee in time were gone. And where there had been farmland and forest and the sounds of human life, there was only water, cold, green, silent water, stretching to the horizon without end. But the bells remained. This is what the fishermen say, what the poets have sung, what the people of the Welsh coast have whispered to one another for centuries. The churches of Cantref Gwaelod were not destroyed when the kingdom drowned. They were preserved, somehow, in the cold and the salt and the darkness. And on certain nights when the tide is low and the wind is still and the world is listening, you can hear them. The bells, ringing far below the surface, a sound like memory, a sound like grief, a sound like a kingdom that refuses to be forgotten. Some say the bells ring as a warning, reminding the living of the price of carelessness. Some say they ring as a prayer, the dead still keeping their rituals even after all these years. Some say they ring for no reason at all, just the current moving through towers that have stood too long to fall. Just the water singing in bronze throats that have not been silenced by time or tide. We do not know. We only listen. There is evidence if you look for it. At low tide, along the coast of Cardigan Bay, stone causeways and the stumps of ancient trees emerge from the sand remnants of a forest that grew before the water came. Divers have found traces of human habitation, walls, tools, the bones of animals that were never meant to live in the sea. The legends, it seems, are not entirely legend. Something was there before the water claimed it. Something is there still. But the bells are harder to prove. No diver has found a church beneath the waves. No camera has captured towers rising from the seafloor. The bells exist only in stories, in the ears of those who claim to have heard them, in the traditions passed from generation to generation. Perhaps this is as it should be. Perhaps some truths cannot be photographed or measured. Perhaps some things are real only to those who believe, or only to those who need to believe, or only to those who stand alone on a darkening shore and listen for the voices of the dead. What do we owe to the places we have lost? This is the question that rises from the waters of Cardigan Bay, that floats on the tide like kelp, that brushes against the legs of anyone who wades too far from shore. Every civilization that has ever existed has lost places. To fire, to flood, to war, to time. Cities buried under ash. Islands swallowed by earthquakes. Forests drowned by rising seas. We cannot save them. We cannot bring them back. But we can remember. We can tell their stories. We can listen for their bells. even when we know or think we know that no bells can ring beneath the sea. Perhaps this is what the dead ask of us. Not rescue, which is impossible. Not grief, which is exhausting. Just memory, just acknowledgement. Just the simple act of saying, you were here, you mattered, you are not forgotten. The bells of Cantrair, Gwaelod ring for the drowned kingdom, but they ring, too, for all the places we have lost, all the names we have forgotten, all the stories that have slipped beneath the surface of time and wait there still, hoping someone will hear. Let us rest now on the shore. The sun has set. The tide is coming in, erasing the footprints of everyone who walked this beach today. The water is black and silver in the dying light, and somewhere out there far out, where the sea meets the sky, the kingdom sleeps. Close your eyes. Feel the sand shifting beneath you. Hear the rhythm of the waves, ancient and patient, the same rhythm they have kept since before there were ears to hear them. And listen not with your ears, but with something deeper, something that knows how to hear what cannot be said. The bells are there, faint, distant, a tolling from another world, another time, another layer of reality that exists just beneath the one we see. They ring for the lost. They ring for the forgotten. They ring for you, standing on the shore, listening. The tide rises. The bells fade. And we drift deeper into sleep, carried by currents older than memory, toward shores we have not yet learned to name. In the heart of ancient Babylon, where the Euphrates once flowed like a ribbon of silver through a city of 100 gates, there was said to be a wonder that defied the very nature of the land. A garden green, lush, impossible, rising in terraces from the desert floor, watered by machines that no one could explain, fragrant with flowers that had no right to bloom where the sun baked the earth to cracked clay. This was the Hanging Gardens, and of all the wonders of the ancient world, it is the only one we cannot prove existed at all. Close your eyes. Let the scent of jasmine drift toward you across the centuries. Let the sound of falling water fill the silence, and let us wander together through a garden that may have been real or may have been a dream, and that, perhaps, is more beautiful for the not knowing. The story, as the Greeks told it, was a story of love. A king named Nebuchadnezzar had taken a bride from the mountains of Media, a woman named Amades, raised among the green hills and forested valleys of her homeland. When she came to Babylon, she found herself in a city of mud, brick, and stone, of flat plains stretching to the horizon, of a sky so vast and empty it seemed to crush the soul. She missed the mountains. She missed the trees. She missed the coolness of streams and the shade of leaves overhead. And so the king, because he loved her, decided to bring the mountains to her. He ordered his architects to build a garden like no garden the world had ever seen. Not flat, but rising terrace upon terrace, level upon level, until the green reached toward the sky like a ziggurat made of leaves and flowers. He ordered engineers to devise systems that would carry water from the river to the heights of the garden pumps and channels and waterfalls that kept the soil moist and the plants alive, even under the brutal Mesopotamian sun. The work took years, perhaps decades. Resources were gathered from across the empire, trees from Lebanon, flowers from Persia, seeds from lands whose names the Babylonians did not know. The finest gardeners were brought to tend the plants, the finest masons to build the terraces, the finest mechanics to maintain the systems that kept water flowing against gravity itself. And when it was finished, the queen climbed to the highest level and looked out over a landscape that reminded her, at last, of home. But did it exist? This is the question that haunts the garden, that clings to it like mist on morning leaves. No archaeological evidence has ever been found, no terrace foundations, no irrigation channels, no remains of the elaborate engineering that such a structure would require. The Babylonian records, meticulous in so many things, do not mention it. The visitors who described it in such vivid detail may have been describing something they had only heard about, a story passed from mouth to mouth until it became too beautiful not to be true. Some scholars believe the gardens existed not in Babylon at all, but in Nineveh, built by a different king in a different century, for reasons the records have preserved. Others believe the gardens were real, but smaller than the legends suggest, a modest courtyard that grew in the telling until it became a wonder of the world. Others still believe the gardens were purely imaginary, a symbol, a metaphor, a dream of paradise that the Greeks projected onto a distant, half-known land. We do not know, and perhaps this not knowing is part of the garden's beauty. It exists in the space between history and myth, between what was and what might have been. It is a garden of the imagination, and in the imagination it can never wither. Let us walk there now. Imagine the terraces rising before you in the hour before sunset. The light is golden, the air is thick with heat, but a coolness drifts down from above the coolness of shade and water, of leaves and stone. You climb a stairway carved from limestone, and with each step, the sounds of the city below grow fainter. The markets, the temples, the million voices of Babylon fade into a murmur, then a whisper, then silence. Here, at the heart of the garden, there is only green. Palms spread their fronds overhead, creating a canopy that filters the sun into soft, dancing patterns. Flowers bloom in impossible profusion. Roses and lilies, jasmine and pomegranate, species gathered from every corner of the known world. The air is heavy with their perfume, sweet and complex, like a song played on instruments you have never heard. Water is everywhere. It trickles from channels cut into the stone. It cascades from terrace to terrace in small waterfalls that catch the light and scatter it into rainbows. It pools in basins where fish drift lazily, their scales glinting gold and silver. The sound of water is constant, a gentle, ceaseless music that washes away thought and leaves only feeling. And somewhere, perhaps, the queen sits on a bench carved from cedar, looking out over her impossible garden, feeling the breeze from the mountains she will never see again, and knowing that she is loved. What does it mean to build a garden for someone you love? The question is not about engineering or horticulture. It is about devotion, the willingness to reshape the world itself for the sake of another's happiness. Nebuchadnezzar, if the legends are true, looked at the desert and said, "This is not enough." He looked at the limits of what was possible and said, "I will exceed them." He looked at his wife's sorrow and said, "I will build something to heal it, even if it takes the rest of my life." This is what we long for, perhaps not the garden itself, but the love that would imagine such a garden. The love that says, "I see your pain, and I will move mountains to ease it. I will bring water to the desert. I will coax flowers from stone. I will make the impossible possible because you are worth it." The garden may never have existed, but the longing that imagined it is real. And in that longing, the garden blooms still in stories, in dreams, in the quiet corners of the heart where we keep our visions of paradise. Let us rest now in the shade. The sun is setting over Babylon. The sky turns to flame, then to rose, then to violet. The garden darkens around you, but the water keeps singing, and the flowers keep releasing their perfume into the cooling air. Close your eyes. Feel the stone beneath your feet, worn smooth by the steps of gardeners and queens. Feel the mist from the waterfalls on your skin. Feel the presence of love ancient, patient, enduring surrounding you like the walls of a sanctuary. The garden may be gone. The terraces may be dust. The flowers may be memory. The water may have returned to the river long ago. But here, in the darkness behind your eyelids, the garden remains, green and impossible and beautiful beyond words. Sleep now. Let the garden hold you. Let the waterfalls sing you toward dreams. And know that somewhere, in some version of the world, the flowers are still blooming, and the queen is still smiling, and love is still building its impossible wonders against the desert and the dark. Long before the first roads were built, before horses were tamed or wheels invented, there were paths that crossed the earth paths invisible to the eye, but felt by those who knew how to walk them. They ran through forests and over mountains, across deserts, and along the edges of seas. They connected sacred places, stone circles and burial mounds, temples and springs, sites where the boundary between worlds grew thin. These paths have many names. The Chinese called them Lung Mei, the dragon paths. The Australians spoke of songlines. The English came to call them ley lines, threads of energy, or memory, or something older still, woven into the land itself. Close your eyes. Let your feet remember what your mind has forgotten. And let us walk together through the darkness, following a path that may be real or imagined, or something in between a path that winds through starlight, connecting the scattered points of light into a pattern too vast to see. The idea of ley lines came to a man named Alfred Watkins on a summer afternoon in 1921. He was standing on a hilltop in Herefordshire, England, looking out over the landscape, when something shifted in his perception. The churches and standing stones, the crossroads and holy wells, the ancient sites scattered across the countryside, they suddenly seemed to form a pattern. A straight line, then another, then another. In a flash of insight that he later described as visionary, Watkins saw the land as a web of invisible paths, connecting sacred site to sacred site across miles of terrain. He believed these were ancient trackways routes used by prehistoric traders and pilgrims, paths so old they predated the twisting roads of later centuries. Watkins was a businessman, not a mystic. He sought rational explanations, not supernatural ones. But the idea he unleashed took on a life of its own. Others came after him, who saw in ley lines something deeper than trade routes, channels of earth energy, flows of spiritual power, alignments with celestial bodies that suggested a knowledge far beyond what we attribute to ancient peoples. Were they right? Were any of them right? We do not know. But the possibility haunts the landscape, whispering from stone circles, humming in the stillness of ancient groves. Consider the alignments. Stonehenge, that great ring of standing stones on Salisbury Plain, is aligned with the sunrise sunrise on the summer solstice and the sunset on the winter solstice. This is well known, well measured, undeniable. But some researchers have gone further, drawing lines from Stonehenge to other monuments to Avebury, to Glastonbury Tor, to sites scattered across Britain, and finding that these lines, extended, point to still other sites, creating a web that covers the land. The pyramids of Giza are aligned with the stars of Orion's belt. This too is well known, well measured, undeniable. But some have extended this alignment, tracing lines across continents, and found that other ancient monuments in Mexico, in Cambodia, in Peru, fall along the same cosmic geometry, as though the builders of the ancient world were following a plan too vast for any single civilization to complete. Coincidence, imagination, or something else, a memory of connections we have lost, a knowledge of relationships we have forgotten how to see. Let us walk one of these paths. Imagine yourself in the hour before dawn, standing at a place where two ley lines cross. The grass is wet with dew. The air is cold, carrying the scent of earth and something else, something electric, something that makes the hair on your arms stand up. The sky is still dark, but the stars are beginning to fade, as though the approaching sun were dissolving them one by one. You begin to walk. Not on a road, there is no road here, but along a line you can feel more than see. It pulls at you gently, like a current in a river, like the faint tug of a magnet beneath the earth. Your feet know where to step. Your body knows which direction to turn. You are not walking to anywhere in particular. You are simply walking along something, a thread, a channel, a memory laid down in the land so long ago that even the earth has forgotten, but not entirely. The path leads you through a forest where the trees grow in strange patterns, their branches reaching toward an invisible center. It leads you past a spring that bubbles up from rock, its water cold and tasting of minerals and time. It leads you to a hilltop where a single standing stone waits a marker, a guardian, a point of connection in a network that spans the world. You place your hand on the stone. It is cold, but something moves beneath the surface. A vibration, a pulse, a rhythm that matches your heartbeat, or that your heartbeat matches. You are not sure which. You are not sure it matters. What would it mean if the paths were real? It would mean that the ancients understood something. We have lost a relationship between earth and sky, between stone and star, between the places where humans built their monuments and the forces that flow beneath and above all things. It would mean that the world is not random, not chaotic, but patterned, and that we, if we learn to see, can walk those patterns and become part of them. It would mean that we are not separate from the land, but woven into it. That the energy that flows through the earth flows also through us. That the paths exist not only out there, in the fields and forests, but in here, in the networks of our nerves and the chambers of our hearts. Perhaps this is why the idea of ley lines persists, even in the absence of proof. It speaks to something we long for: connection, meaning, a sense that we are part of something larger than our individual lives. The paths promise that the world is enchanted, that the sacred has not been erased, that there are still ways to walk that lead beyond the ordinary into the numinous. Whether they exist as literal energy channels or only as metaphors, the paths call to us. And sometimes, perhaps, that calling is enough. Let us rest now at the crossroads. The sun has risen. The stars are gone, though they are still there, hidden by light, waiting for darkness to reveal them again. The path stretches out before you and behind you, and in every direction, invisible but present, like veins in a leaf, like threads in a tapestry. Close your eyes. Feel the ground beneath your feet, solid and ancient and alive. Feel the pull of the path, faint but unmistakable, a suggestion rather than a command. And know that wherever you walk, whatever roads you take, you are always on the path. The path is everywhere. The path is inside you. Sleep now. Let the ley lines hum you toward dreams. Let the earth cradle you as it has cradled walkers since the first feet touched the first stone. And tomorrow, when you wake, look at the world with new eyes. Look for the patterns. Listen for the pulse. The paths are waiting. The stars are watching. And the walk always continues. Beneath the sands of Egypt, beneath the weight of 4,000 years, beneath the stone that has watched dynasties rise and crumble like dust in wind, there are chambers that no living eye has seen. Hidden spaces, sealed since the time of the pharaohs, holding secrets we can only imagine. This is the Great Pyramid of Giza, the last of the ancient wonders still standing, the monument that has inspired more questions than all the others combined. Who built it? How did they lift millions of stones, some weighing more than 60 tons, without wheels or iron tools or machines? And perhaps most haunting of all, what lies within the spaces we have not yet opened? Close your eyes. Let the weight of ages settle over you. And let us descend together into the darkness, following a single candle flame through passages that may lead to wonders or to secrets the ancients intended never to be found. The pyramid was built during the reign of Khufu in the 26th century before the Common Era. This much we know. But beyond this fact, almost everything is uncertain, contested, wrapped in the shadows of speculation. The official purpose was as a tomb monument to house the body of the pharaoh for eternity, to protect his journey through the afterlife, to proclaim his glory to all the ages that would follow. And yet, when explorers first entered the pyramid in modern times, they found no body, no treasures, only empty chambers and long, silent corridors leading to rooms that seemed to have been abandoned before they were ever used. Where is Khufu? Where are the riches that would have accompanied him to the afterlife? Were the tombs robbed in antiquity? Or was this never a tomb at all, but something else entirely, a temple, a machine, a repository of knowledge, a portal to other realms? We do not know. The pyramid keeps its secrets. The stones have not spoken in 4 millennia, and they are not inclined to speak now. But recently, new spaces have been found. In 2017, scientists using cosmic ray imaging detected a large void above the Grand Gallery, a space approximately 100 feet long, previously unknown, sealed since the pyramid was completed. No one has entered it. No one knows what it contains. It exists only as a shadow on a scan, a negative space, an absence that suggests a presence we cannot yet comprehend. There may be other voids, other chambers, other secrets waiting in the 2,300,000 blocks that make up this impossible structure. We have explored only a fraction of the pyramid's interior. The rest remains dark, silent, patient. What might be there? This is the question that haunts Egyptologists and dreamers alike. Perhaps nothing empty space, structural necessity, the byproduct of construction rather than intention. Perhaps treasure, hidden so well that not even the tomb robbers of 3,000 years could find it. Perhaps texts, papyrus scrolls containing the knowledge of the pyramid builders, the secrets of their construction, the wisdom of a civilization that achieved things we still cannot explain. Or perhaps something else entirely. Something we cannot imagine. Something that waits in the darkness, not because it was hidden, but because we are not yet ready to see it. Let us descend. Imagine yourself at the entrance to the pyramid on the north face, where a narrow passage slopes downward into the stone. The air is still. The light from your candle illuminates only a few feet ahead, leaving everything else in shadow. The walls press close on either side, smooth limestone that has been touched by how many hands over how many centuries. You descend. The passage is so low that you must crouch, moving forward step by careful step. The air grows thicker, warmer, tinged with the dust of ages. Sound behaves strangely here. Your footsteps seem to echo and then vanish, as though the stone were absorbing them, holding them, adding them to all the other sounds it has collected over the millennia. The passage levels out, then rises. You climb through the grand gallery, a soaring corridor with walls that step inward as they rise, creating a space that feels both monumental and intimate. At the top, you enter the king's chamber, a room of red granite, empty save for a single stone sarcophagus, lidless, uninscribed, holding nothing but darkness. You stand there for a long time. The candle flame does not flicker. There is no wind here, no breath but your own. Above you, somewhere in the black mass of stone, is the void they discovered. Below you, beneath the bedrock, are passages that have never been fully explored. All around you, the pyramid waits silent, patient, keeping its secrets close. Why does it matter? Why do we care about empty chambers and sealed spaces? Perhaps because we sense that the pyramid is not merely a building. It is a message, a communication from the distant past, encoded in stone, waiting for someone who can read it. The builders went to extraordinary lengths to create this structure, aligning it with the stars, orienting it to the cardinal directions, shaping it with precision that modern engineers struggle to match. They did not do this for a tomb. They did this for something more, something we have not yet understood. The hidden chambers are part of that message. They are invitations to wonder, to question, to recognize that we do not know as much as we think we know. They remind us that the past is not a closed book, but an ongoing mystery, that there are still discoveries to be made, still secrets to be uncovered, still wonders waiting in the darkness for someone brave enough to seek them. Let us rest now in the king's chamber. The candle burns low. The shadows press close. The granite walls, brought from quarries 500 miles away, absorb your warmth and give nothing back. You are in the heart of the pyramid now, in a space that has not changed since the day the builders sealed it and walked away. Close your eyes. Feel the weight above you, millions of tons of stone, held in perfect balance, pressing down without crushing, surrounding without suffocating. Feel the silence so complete that you can hear your own blood moving, your own lungs expanding, your own heart beating in rhythm with something vast and ancient. The chambers that have not been opened are there, somewhere in the darkness. The secrets that have not been told are waiting. And you are here in this moment, connected to everyone who has ever stood in this space and wondered. Sleep now. Let the pyramid hold you. Let the darkness be a blanket, not a threat. And dream of passages leading to chambers filled with light, to knowledge preserved across millennia, to wonders that will be revealed when we are finally ready to receive them. The breath of kings lingers here. The silence speaks, and the pyramid, eternal and patient, keeps its watch over secrets that may yet change everything we think we know. On a small island in the vast Pacific Ocean, surrounded by the silent gaze of stone giants, there once existed a form of writing that has never been deciphered. Carved into wooden tablets, etched in lines that flow like water or coil like snakes, the symbols of Rongorongo remain a mystery, a voice from the past speaking in a language we have forgotten how to hear. This is Easter Island Rapa Nui, as its people call it, the most isolated, inhabited place on Earth. Here, surrounded by 2,000 miles of open ocean in every direction, a civilization rose and fell, leaving behind monuments that still mystify the world. The great stone heads, the moai, are known to everyone, but fewer know of the tablets, the kohau Rongorongo, that may hold the secrets of who these people were, what they believed, and what happened to them in the end. Close your eyes. Let the sound of waves crashing on distant shores fill your hearing. Let the isolation wrap around you like a cloak, and let us gaze together upon symbols that have waited centuries for someone to understand. The tablets were first reported by missionaries in the 1860s, though they were almost certainly much older. By then, the civilization that had created them was already in ruins. Disease and slave raids had devastated the population. The elders who knew the old ways were dying, and with them, the knowledge of what the symbols meant. The missionaries collected what tablets they could find, some hidden in caves, others used as fishing line wrappers, still others worn smooth from handling over generations. They sent samples to scholars in Europe, hoping someone could unlock the mystery. No one could. The script was like nothing anyone had seen before. Rongorongo is written in reverse boustrophedon, meaning that every other line is upside down, so that the reader must rotate the tablet 180 degrees at the end of each line. This alone is unusual, found in only a few other writing systems in human history. But the symbols themselves are even stranger. Human figures, birds, fish, geometric shapes, objects that might be plants or tools or things we cannot identify. They seem to dance across the surface of the wood, forming patterns that suggest meaning, but refuse to reveal it. What do they say? Histories, myths, prayers, astronomical records. instructions for the carving of the moai? We do not know. The tablets remain silent, speaking a language no living person understands. There was one man who might have known. His name was Metoro Ta-Ur, and in 1886 he was brought before a bishop who wished to understand the tablets. Metoro claimed to have been trained in the old way, to have learned from elders who could read the symbols. He agreed to demonstrate. For hours, Metoro chanted. He held the tablets before him and recited word stories, perhaps, or songs, while the bishop transcribed what he heard. But when scholars later analyzed the transcriptions, they found no consistent correlation between the symbols and the words. Metoro's chants were not translations. They were something else, improvisations, perhaps, or meditations inspired by the symbols. Or perhaps the symbols were never meant to be read in the way we understand reading, but to serve as prompts for oral recitation, keys that unlocked memorized texts. We do not know. Metoro died without fully explaining. The other elders who might have known had already been taken by the slave ships or the diseases that followed. The knowledge, whatever it was, went with them into silence. Let us hold one of the tablets in our hands. Imagine the wood toramiro, a tree that once grew on the island but is now virtually extinct there. Another casualty of the same collapse that silenced the script. The tablet is smooth, polished by the hands of generations who held it as you hold it now. The symbols are shallow but precise, carved with tools that were made of obsidian and bone, by fingers that knew exactly what they were doing. Run your fingertip along the grooves. Feel the curves and angles, the repetitions and variations. Here is a birdman figure, perhaps representing Tangata Manu, the sacred birdman of Rapa Nui religion. Here is a shape that might be a fish, or a canoe, or something we have no name for. Here are marks that could be numbers, or sounds, or ideas that do not translate into any category we recognize. The tablet speaks. You can feel it, but you cannot understand. What is lost when a language dies? More than words, more than grammar or syntax, or the ability to order food or give directions. A language is a way of seeing a system of categories that shapes how its speakers perceive the world. A color that has no name in your language is harder to see, harder to remember, harder to distinguish from colors that do have names. A concept that your language cannot express is harder to think, harder to feel, harder to share with others. When the last speakers of Rongorongo died, an entire way of seeing died with them. The categories, They used to understand the world categories encoded in those flowing symbols became invisible, inaccessible, lost. We can photograph the tablets. We can measure and catalog and digitize them. But we cannot see what they saw when they looked at those lines. We cannot think what they thought when they carved them. This is the deepest loss, not the information, which might be recovered someday, but the perspective, the unique angle of vision that existed only in those minds, on that island, in that language. Gone. Forever. Let us rest now with the tablets. The cave where they were hidden is dark and cool. The air smells of salt and stone and the faint, vanishing perfume of the Toromiro wood. Outside, the moai stand in their eternal rows, their backs to the sea, their eyes looking inward toward an island that no longer remembers what they were meant to protect. Close your eyes. Let the symbols float in your minds, birdmen and fish, spirals and lines, patterns that almost make sense, almost reveal their meaning, before slipping back into mystery. Let the silence of the unread script settle over you like a blessing, or a prayer, or a morning chant for all the things we will never know. The tablets wait, the symbols endure, and somewhere perhaps in dreams or in the deep structures of the human mind, the knowledge still exists waiting for someone who can remember how to listen, how to see, how to read without reading. Sleep now. Let the island hold you. Let the waves be a lullaby and the mystery be a comfort. Some things are not meant to be solved. Some things are meant to be wondered at, to be sat with, to be held in the heart like a question too sacred to answer. The script speaks. We listen, and in the silence between the symbols, something ancient stirs and waits and breathes. We have traveled far tonight. You and I, we have descended into libraries that breathe beneath the sand. We have listened for the song of cracked stone at dawn. We have stood before gates that opened only once, and temples that remember the stars, and cities that faded with the moonlight. We have unrolled maps that led into shadow, and heard bells ring beneath the sea. We have wandered through gardens that bloomed in darkness, and walked paths wound through starlight. We have touched the silence of chambers no living eye has seen, and gazed upon scripts no living voice can read. And now, in this final chapter, we come not to a place, but to a threshold. This is the hour before the world remembers, the hour when all that has been dreamed begins to fade, the hour when sleep is deepest and the veil between worlds is thinnest. Here, at the edge of waking and forgetting, we pause. We gather the threads of all we have seen. We prepare to let them go. close your eyes if they are not already closed. Let your breath slow to the rhythm of waves on an ancient shore. Let your heartbeat match the pulse of the earth, that slow, steady thrumming that has continued since the first stone cooled and the first water fell. You are part of that rhythm now. You have always been part of it. Tonight, you remembered how to feel it. The places we have visited are not gone. They never were. The Library of Alexandria still breathes beneath the sand in the part of you that loves knowledge, that cherishes the written word, that believes some truths are too precious to lose. The colossi of Memnon still sing at dawn in the part of you that responds to beauty, that hears music in broken things, that knows the cracks are where the light gets in. The gate of the gods still waits in the mountains in the part of you that longs for passage, for transformation, for the courage to step through into the unknown. The temple that remembered the stars still stands in the part of you that looks up at the night sky and feels connected to something vast and ancient and full of meaning. All the lost places live in you. This is what we have learned tonight, though we never said it in so many words. The cities buried in sand, the kingdoms drowned by sea, the gardens lost to time, they are not truly lost. They have been folded into the human story, into the great collective dream that we all share. When you think of them, when you imagine them, when you feel the ache of their absence and the beauty of their memory, they live again. You are their continuation. You are the place where they wait to be remembered. And perhaps this is what the ancients always knew. Perhaps this is why they built their monuments and carved their scripts and aligned their temples with the stars. Not for permanence. They knew nothing is permanent, but for memory, for the chance that someone someday would stand where they stood and look up at the same sky and feel the same wonder and understand that they were not alone. You are not alone. You have never been alone. Every human who has ever lived, every dreamer who has ever wondered, every builder who has ever raised stone against the dark, they are with you now, in this hour, in this breath. They are the library that breathes. They are the bell that rings beneath the sea. They are the garden that blooms in darkness, the path that winds through starlight, the script that waits to be read. Let us release these mysteries now, not to forget them, but to let them return to the place from which they came. They were born in silence, and to silence they will return. They were born in darkness, and in darkness they are most at home. The light of waking will not destroy them. It will only veil them gently until the night comes again and the stars emerge and the hour of remembering returns. Sleep now. Let the lost city of eternal silence enfold you. Let its walls be soft as breath, its streets paved with dreams, its towers rising into a sky that is also the inside of your own mind. You have earned this rest. You have traveled far. You have wandered well. The scrolls are safe in their hidden chambers. The gate waits for someone who has not yet been born, or for you in some future night when you are ready. The bells ring on, far below the surface, marking time for the drowned and the living alike. The garden blooms. The path continues. The breath of kings lingers in sealed chambers, and the script speaks in a language older than words. One candle still burns. Somewhere in the darkness, in a chamber that has not been opened for 1,000 years, a single flame flickers. It does not waver. It does not fade. It has been burning since the library was sealed, since the last scroll was placed on its shelf, since the door closed and the silence began. The candle burns for you. It burns for everyone who has ever lain awake at night and wondered about the mysteries that surround us. It burns to remind us that even in the darkest places, even in the forgotten corners of the world and the mind, light persists. Knowledge persists. Wonder persists. And as long as someone somewhere still asks the questions, still gazes at the stars, and wonders what they mean, still traces the coastlines of impossible maps, still listens for songs rising from cracked stone, the flame will continue to burn. Rest now. The night is deep, and you have earned your dreams. Tomorrow, the world will return the noise, the light, the 10,000 small concerns that fill our waking hours. But tonight, you have touched something older and deeper. You have remembered, if only for a moment, that the world is more mysterious than we usually allow ourselves to believe. Carry that memory with you. Let it be a candle in your own darkness, a flame that flickers but does not go out. When the world feels too solid, too explained, too small, remember the library that breathes beneath the sand. Remember the gate that opened only once. Remember the garden, the bell, the path, the script, the chamber, the stars. Remember that you are part of the mystery. You always have been. You always will be. The lost city of eternal silence waits, not in the past, not in some distant land, but here, now, in the space behind your eyes, in the hush between your heartbeats, in the dreams that are already beginning to unfold. Enter now. The door is open. The silence welcomes you. And somewhere in the depths of that ancient city, a voice is speaking, patient, gentle, as old as the stars, saying the only words that matter: rest, wonder, remember. You are home. The candle burns on. The scrolls keep their secrets. The stars wheel overhead as they have wheeled for billions of years and will wheel for billions more. And you dreamer, wanderer, keeper of mysteries, you drift into the deep, surrounded by wonders, held by silence, at peace, until the next night falls and the next story begins, and the eternal dance of question and wonder continues, as it always has, as it always will, forever and ever, world without end. Sleep well. The lost city holds you, and the silence at last is complete. The end